incidents of continuing violence against women and their children. And lastly, fixed-term marriage will improve the quality of life of Filipino families. Less embarrassment, less expenses for failed marriage. Its aims is not to destroy the sanctity of marriage in our country. It actually strengthens Filipino families as a basic unit of our society. Let me further explain the first proposition. This measure aims to give Filipino families a better option when they are in the situation of bad or failed marriage. We have an annulment law here in Philippines, but unfortunately, this is the only option for every Filipinos to get out of failed or bad marriage. According to Helen Golds, and I quote, "Till death do we part is awesome, if you can make it happen. But pragmatically speaking, people change over time. Sometimes people are unfaithful to their commitment and lots of marriages fail. Some end in divorce, annulment, while others grow dysfunctional along with whatever collateral damage that may produce." End of quote. We need better option. Our country is dominated by Christian religion, which makes it conservative as it is today relative to various controversial issues. The fact that the Philippines is the only nation left to pass the divorce bill is evidence to that effect. Here in our country, if you are not contented with your married life, then you're left with no choice but to suffer the arduous and heartbreaking journey of being married. You are left with no option. Imagine this: if you opt to file an annulment suit, then you better be ready with stashes of cash and take the risk of being chastised before the eye of man. On the other hand, if you believe in true love and that every person deserves a second or ninth chance, then you will have to sacrifice a life of eternity with a man or woman that only causes pain in your heart. This is what our options are today. But if marriage contract will be renewable, problems of this magnitude can be resolved at an instant. This is a better option that I am talking about. If marriage contract would be enveloped with that renew your marriage feature, many Filipinos would be greatly benefited. Imagine a life of freedom and imagine of lives of what ifs. What do you think is more livable? My second proposition is that fixed-term marriage will lessen the incidence of violence against women and their children. The statistics shows that based on the National Statistics Office report, 14.4% of married women have experienced physical abuse from their husbands. And more than one-third or 37% of separated or widowed women have experienced physical violence, implying that domestic violence could be the reason for separation or annulment. You know, emotional and other forms of non-personal violence are the most common types of spousal violence. 23% of ever married women, 1 in 7 ever married women experience physical violence by their husband, while 8% experience sexual violence by their husbands. Patterns in prevalence of spousal violence are similar to those violence experienced by women 15 to 49 years old, most likely higher among separated, widowed, and divorced, currently with married women who have married more than once. If there is a fixed-term marriage, then incidents of violence against women and children would be prevented. Usually, a bad marriage is characterized by husbands abusing their wives and wives yielding to the battering. The reason is attributed to the feeling of imprisonment. Women feel as if they are in the dead end of their lives, so instead of fighting back the abuse, they choose to succumb to this kind of violence. With the aid of expirations, or expiration dates, women who are suffering bad marriage will feel less intimidated to their husbands and to the critical point of view of other people. If after 5 years or 10 years, for example, of being spouses, they feel that they are incompatible, then they are free to leave. Actually, within the 10-year period, they have the chance to think deeply whether to renew the marriage or not. And remember that renewing a marriage after the end of contract is a unilateral decision. Without any positive action after maybe 2 years, then the said period, it is presumed that the first 10 years of their marriage is still in good condition. Marriage is supposed to be a sanctuary and not an imprisonment. It is intended to create a family and not to destroy a home. Abuse the wife and inflict pain to the child. Yes, marriage is an inviolable institution, but if it already violates the constitutional and human rights, should we still continue to incarcerate and destroy ourselves? Remember that above all other rights, the rights to life and liberty are considered the supreme among all other rights. And it is recognized by the fundamental law of the land. Now, let me go to my third proposition, which is fixed-term marriage will improve the quality of life of Filipino families. Less embarrassment, less expenses, bad or failed marriage. It is a high time to make a law that is more accessible to the public and less expensive, especially to those who cannot afford the cost of annulment. Let us see how much it will cost. Almost 75 to 100,000 pesos it costs for annulment. For example, 6,000, but would depend if there are properties owned by the couple, service of summons about 1,000, and other things, attorney's fees, it depends whether in Manila or in the province. So, according to Bayan Muna Representative Nericon Monales, napakahaba, napakagastos ng proseso ng annulment. Mga Sharon, Cuneta at Chris Aquino lang ang nakaka-afford. Paano naman ang karaniwang Pilipino? End of quote. And this was his statement during the interview. Remember that happiness and the law are two different things. The decision is still within the discretion of man and his wife, whether to continue, renew, or terminate their marriage after 10 years. On any law, for that matter, will not destroy the family. Remember that it is only the members of the family who can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can we now have the interpellation? Mr. Speaker, good evening.
Good evening.
You mentioned earlier that the life and liberty should be prioritized by our society, right?
Yes.
What is more important, cost or safety?
Cost.
And then it's contradicting to the principle that life and liberty should be above all. Do you agree, sir?
No.
If you were the woman, the battered woman, an abusive husband, would you consider the cost of the annulment over your safety, over your life? Whereas life is more important than our properties.
I prefer fixed-term marriage, if that is the case.
Isn't it that annulment is a better alternative for your proposition for a renewable marriage? Do you agree, sir?
Oh, annulment is very costly, while this proposed law is intended for all Filipinos.
Yes, sir. But I want to raise the fact that the safety of individuals, the life and liberty of the individuals is far more important than the properties. Do you agree, sir?
Yes, I agree.
Sir, if I might a personal question, do you plan on getting married someday?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you want to live your life in uncertainty?
No, of course.
Will you agree if I say that married life in uncertainty is a low quality of living because you mentioned earlier about the quality of life?
Yes, absolutely yes.
Then a renewable marriage or a marriage with an expiration date provides poor living conditions. Do you agree?
It does not follow, Your Honor.
Sir, do you agree that the family is the very basic social institution?
Yes, of course.
Do you agree that marriage is the starting point of a family?
Yes.
Then marriage shall therefore be protected for the sake of the society. Do you agree?
That's why we propose fixed-term marriage.
Do you think that Act's constitution, the alteration of the marital terms violate the very essence of the family?
No.
Then marriage is not an important element of family. Do you agree?
No, of course. It's very important.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The second negative constructive speaker. You have the floor, sir. Good evening, my dear colleagues, distinguished members of the panel of judges, coaches, and guests. May I present to you the arguments regarding the beneficiality of maintaining the status quo of marriage in the Philippine context. The Filipinos are known for their value of close family ties which distinguish our proud nation from other cultures in the world. Meanwhile, the imposition of a fixed-term marriage policy in our country will seriously threaten this value and the structure of the Filipino family, since the individuals will belittle the sanctity of marriage, which may eventually detriment the said social institution. This distinctive value of the Filipinos is very vital aspect in the formation of our cultural identity of our identity as a whole nation. Furthermore, the protection of the institution of marriage, which cannot be attained through the imposition of a fixed-term marriage policy, will provide for the stability of the Philippine society as the number of individuals coming from broken families which may be directly correlated with crimes and other social dysfunctions which will be substantially decreased. It is in conformity with the fact that the family is the building block of the society and the very basic social institution. While it is true that the social changes are inevitable and that the conditions culturally, politically, and economically have changed in the recent past, it does not necessarily mean that we should adapt and implement change in every aspect of our lives, especially on an aspect of our legal system wherein there is no negative effect. There are no current problems in the marriage institution in the Philippines. The institution of marriage is one of the most important life events in human lives. The human lives had evolved throughout the years, whereas divorce, separation, annulment, and prenuptial agreements are now existing in several parts of the globe due to the empowerment of the parties involved and the complexity of our modern society. Again, despite of this complexity, marriage must still be maintained. The status of marriage must still be maintained because of its effects on the future of the future generations. Do we want our children living in a condition where there are no values anymore? Of course. There are several Filipino moral characteristics which we wanted to impart to our children, like the deference or respect to the elders and the high regard to family relations. Such values of the Filipinos cannot be taught by broken families as effectively as a normal family comprising of a mother and a father. In support of this premise, imposition of the fixed-term marriage will pave way towards the increase in the number of the broken families. The 1987 Philippine Constitution specifically provides for the separation of the church and the state. However, this doctrine merely serves as the limitation of the powers of these two institutions. In reality, the church and the state materially contribute and coordinate in the alignment of the Filipino values and morality. And we are all aware of the fact that almost all religions have different concepts of marriage, and if the state impose a new concept, there will be conflict or disagreements between the church and the state. As both a civil right and a religious right, both the church and the state have interest in the institution of marriage in our country. Therefore, each of them is expected to respect each other's perspectives, principles, and procedures with regards to marriage for a more harmonious relationship between them and thus producing a more stable and functional society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could we now go to the interpellation by the second affirmative speaker?
Good evening, Mr. Speaker.
Good evening, sir.
Okay. My question is on the answerable yes or no. So, do you agree with me, Mr. Speaker, that we need to provide a better option for every Filipinos who are victims of failed marriage?
No, because the option is available.
Yes, thank you. And then my second question, are you aware that 35% of married couples file their annulment cases within the first 5 years of their marriage?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with me that if we run a survey, the Filipinos are ready for a new law that can provide them a better option to solve the increasing number of failed marriage?
No.
Okay. Do you agree with me also that it does not follow that there are more annulment or nullity cases because of easy options to get out of marriage?
Yes.
Do you agree with me, Mr. Speaker, that happiness and the law are two different things?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware, Mr. Speaker, that morality, the categorizing of human behavior as good and bad, is a wholly personal and subjective exercise?
No, sir.
Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Speaker, that if a marriage contract is made with renewable terms, the sanctity of marriage is upheld and not tainted?
No, sir.
Do you agree with me, Mr. Speaker, that existing laws are not enough to guarantee and protect the rights of both couples and their children with regards to failed marriage?
No, sir.
Okay, that's all.